business and succeeding in business is something that doesn't have to take away from your why. It can enhance it. And you realize like, oh my gosh, I actually failed a lot to learn this, right? So it almost comes with a package. If you try to take shortcuts, somehow life throws you right back to learning. And so you have to accept it. And fear wasn't really there. I hadn't had that time to build the fear factor. It was time to grow.
Welcome to The Path to Wealth, the show about well-being, fulfillment, and financial freedom. And I'm your host, Hannes Henty. Welcome everybody. Today we have Brenda Mas. She's a real estate developer and she has multifamily properties under management. She just closed a deal recently and she does all of that while she's also having a lovely family and a great lifestyle. So we want to dive into the mindset that it takes to be a mother and a business owner at the same time and kind of all bring it together in a lifestyle that feels well-rounded. So welcome, Brenda.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being here.
So I'm really curious, like, how do you do it all together? You have a family and you're bringing those ventures on, you're building real estate developments. How does one do it all? Like, I know my mother has built a business with my dad while she had 3 children. So I've seen it, but at the same time, I've always been wondering how she did it. Like, what kind of mindset does it take to do it?
I mean, to be honest with you, you always feel that you are behind, right? You never truly feel as though you are managing it all. I think you're never going to truly feel content if you're a person who's always trying to advance. And for me, family has always been number one, no matter what. Family is important. And I knew that for me, my mom was a big inspiration to me. I'm the oldest of 4 daughters. I had a single mom. She raised us by herself. We didn't have any means, to be honest with you. But the truth was that we weren't really exposed because I was around other individuals who were just like me. We had immigrant parents. My mother had a 3rd grade education. So I never had someone to even help me with homework. I had to figure it out on my own. But there was never a feeling as though we were missing out on anything because, like I said, your environment is really reflective of the people you're around. And the people I was around were just like me. Our parents were always working. You held the house down with your siblings while your parents were away. And having that responsibility, I think, from a very young age, I already knew that family was number one.
Yeah.
And for me, I've always made that effort, even when I was working really hard at, the various jobs I've had, family always came first. And so I think, when you try to be a good parent, it always feels like you are behind, you're not doing enough. But there is a balance that's required. There's a balance that's required if you want to provide for them and provide well, like I've always had that desire to do. And the balance of spending time with them. I think that's truly what a fulfilled life is when you can figure out how to, put what ultimately was your goal, which is for me, family, and combine it with that, hard work and trying to persevere on the career side.
Yeah.
When you don't do that, you kind of feel out of kilter.
Yeah. Would you say that it helped you on your journey or that it was an additional layer of struggle that you were the daughter of immigrants? Like, was it something that you think benefited you because of the challenges that maybe came with it? Or was it more of a bump in the road where you felt like you don't get the same shot as someone else? Did that build the resilience or do you think, that it threw you off?
Well, I think sometimes you're kind of born with this character of wanting, you have to have that peak interest, right? And for me, having that interest from a very young age of wanting to learn more
Yeah.
helped to be in a situation where I became responsible really early, where I saw my mother working really hard to provide. And so when I went out into the real world, it was eye-opening for me to see other people living a completely different life than I had. And I had a deep desire at that point. I needed to know how they got there. How did they have that life? What did that life feel like?
Yeah.
And so that kind of sparked, I think, that little drive to want to learn, to push for more. And I would say it definitely helped.
So it sounds like you have a natural growth mindset already. Like it sounds like from early on you had that curiosity to and that drive to seek out new ventures or new possibilities for yourself.
Absolutely. I think, when you don't have much and you see others,
Yeah.
you either become fearful of it or you become curious and you want to know how is it that they got that. And to be honest with you, I feel like because I didn't have much, fear wasn't really there. I
Yeah.
hadn't had that time to build the fear factor. It was time to grow.
Did you feel like anyway there was little to nothing to lose? At least it's like
Absolutely. Absolutely. I really had nothing to lose
yeah.
at that point.
So
I
only
felt like the
yeah.
biggest thing I could lose was me reaching my potential.
Yeah. And I think that we see a lot of that most people don't really close the gap between their potential because I think the cap is really I was listening to an interesting podcast in the morning and they were comparing it to a pumpkin that's grown in a glass is contained by the glass. And that's kind of how our mind contains our possibilities. Like if we are the glass ceiling, then that's the shape our success or our life will take.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think what really helps also is I started associating myself with people who started showing me that my like you said, you're contained in this smaller way of thinking,
Yeah.
and then they help you expand. And that's so important because that also helps, with the fear factor when you think you can't do something and then someone shows you they can do it. Then you want to do it.
So who influenced your thought the most when it comes to that mindset? Is it something that's been nurtured in your family or is it something that you kind of had to fight for? Is it something that came natural to you?
I think not really having a father figure growing up, I've noticed that I had a lot of mentors along the way that became like father figures to me. And I think it was, I didn't seek them out. I think they saw, through my hard work, whether it was maybe my softball coach in high
Yeah.
school or later some of my employers, they saw that I had, maybe a willingness to learn. Like there was nothing beneath me that I wasn't willing to learn. I
Yeah.
was willing to learn anything and work my way up. And I think when people see that in you, they kind of take you in and want to teach you more because
They want to take you under their wing, like nurture you.
absolutely. Those were the individuals that honestly expanded my mind so much because they were all good at their respective fields
Yeah.
and they showed me kindness. They showed me, that mindset. They talked to me and coached me and counseled me along the way. And that is honestly, I think that's what also has influenced me to want to help others because I understand how much someone giving you that moment of, kindness or a little bit of what they've learned along the way
Yeah.
can really help you.
So you really want to pay it forward. That's like where this rolls in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So are there any so besides those people, are there any key figures in your life? Like maybe it was your mom, key lessons. Like I think when I look at back at my own life, there are always lessons learned in moments. And sometimes I feel like I only understand the lesson 20, 30 years later. It's like things
Yes.
I've observed or that were taught to me, and it took like a decade or two and a whole lot of personal life experience for it to unfold. Are there any key moments where you now say, oh, this is where this is coming from, and this is why I appreciate doing right on people, and why kindness is so important, and why nurturing a family is so like important to me.
Yes. You know, my mom, I just have to continue to go back to her because to this day, she is the hardest working individual I know. And I think what it was with her, she had to provide. She didn't have another option. But she taught me how to drive early so that then I could drop her off at work.
Yeah.
And then I'd go home,
Does that
get
mean
rally
before
my
you had a driving
sister.
license?
No, I was
It's
in high
okay.
school then. It
Yeah.
was legal.
Okay.
But she definitely influenced me, and she taught herself how to drive, right?
Yeah.
So not really knowing English, and she was in a different country, and like raising these daughters who are American, and she got her citizenship. Like she did everything the right way.
Yeah.
And she early on was like, you need to get your driver's license. And I didn't realize why, but it was so I could drive her to work early in the morning, and
Yeah.
then I can go back home and, take my sisters to school, and then I would go to school,
Yeah.
do the rally again in the afternoon, picking everyone up, go home, and then at night I would go pick her up. So
Yeah.
this meant she was at work 14-hour days, and seeing somebody who always provided. If we wanted to do an extracurricular activity at school, we did it. There was never a moment where she didn't figure out how to make ends meet. And
Yeah.
still to this day, where she has daughters now, we've all, graduated from college. Some of us have masters, and she still is out there looking for that next, she found a job. She's also investing in real estate. She's
Yeah.
like just continuing to push her boundaries. And that to me is, I know I'm going to be okay because I have a mom who's like showing me that later in
Yeah.
her part of her life, she's still grinding
I think
and
she
she's
showed
loving it.
you a very, very healthy form of hustle.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, and that, yeah, but a version that is very relatable, and but still caring for the family, not the kind of hustle that's just like grinding oneself down for some outside success. So where in
Yes.
that journey do you think your own idea of success got defined? Like, because all of us that are on this path of financial freedom, taking charge of our own life circumstances, it really only works if we define success for ourselves. So where in that journey did you start defining success for yourself?
I still to this day feel like I have so much to accomplish. So I will never feel, I think, like I'm successful, but I'm so grateful along the way.
Yeah.
And I think there's moments of gratitude that I've had where I've recognized, that mindset where you've set out a goal and then you see it happen. Whether it was getting my first car that I really wanted or,
Yeah.
buying your house that first time. It there's so many moments that I truly feel like I became almost, I wouldn't say addicted, but that feeling of just complete gratitude that what you envisioned one day, when I would sit outside my window with nowhere to go when I was a young girl and just desiring for, fairy tale, because that's all you see, right? Where like the cartoons
Yeah.
or whatever. And just having that deep desire for like a beautiful life one day. And then recognizing like, wow, I've come so far. Even if, no matter what, like my family's healthy,
Yeah.
we have a roof over our head. I don't have to worry about putting food in the table. So many of the little things that, you recognize other people aren't as fortunate to have.
Yeah.
I try to be grateful every day for sure. So I think I always feel every day that I've accomplished something, whether it's, my daughter smiling at me, like as small as it may be, like the little things, they go so far.
I think those smiles are the bigger things, no, or the biggest things in fact.
Yes. Yeah,
Like,
that's true.
and I think if we miss to see those little things and appreciate it, then we miss the big picture. Because if we're just slogging it out for the big finish lines, I think everybody agrees that once you cross those milestones, 2 months later, it's the new normal. And only if we really appreciate those smiles on a daily basis, if we go out and share the love, life becomes like a great experience on a day-to-day basis. Because otherwise we just get lost in the hustle. And
Absolutely.
without living in a state of gratefulness, it's just never good enough, no matter where we are. And I think sometimes we here in the US kind of lose perspective on how amazing our life is just by default, almost like the 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 sheer opportunity that is at our fingertips.
Absolutely. I think, and don't get me wrong, I've always had a struggle to remind myself to do that. I still do because you do get in the hustle, you
Yeah,
want to accomplish so much. There's still a checklist you have to finish at the end of the day. And the stress that comes with, getting those things done. I mean, if you're a business owner, those are things you're not going to rest, right? Those are things that are still going to bother you. But really stepping back and reminding yourself why you're doing it will really just will make it all better. Not in a sense that it'll get rid of the stress, but at the same time, you become aware of why you're doing it. And I
yeah,
think we get lost and we forget why we're doing it sometimes, and it becomes tedious.
yeah,
And then you become resentful. And those are things that I struggle with constantly all the time. But I have to remind myself, there's gratefulness that I have to enjoy my family every day because my daughters are getting older, they're going to be gone from the house. I'm facing that now where I have a teenager who wants to spend more time with her friends,
yeah,
right, than her parents. And the great thing about COVID is, in a way, it gave me my daughter back for a year or two to just connect with her.
yeah,
And that's something I wouldn't have gone. She probably would have been out with her friends,
yeah,
enjoying life that whole time. But I realized how quickly she grew, and now she's going to be off on her own. And as a parent, you are told you need to raise them to let them go.
yeah,
But at the same time, it's so hard to see them leave. And so I have to remind myself, like, enjoy this moment and, enjoy the grind because you're also showing them. I think as moms, we sometimes feel guilty that we're working so hard, but and show them by example. Let them hear the conversations of business going on in the
yeah,
background because I didn't have that, right? And I would have been so much further ahead and just aware of how business worked had I been around those kind of conversations. So business and succeeding in business is something that doesn't have to take away from your family, from your why.
yeah.
It can enhance it.
So what is your why if you already go into that direction? Like what gets you out of bed? What excites you? What are you really grinding for?
For me, it's that feeling that I get, like even just talking to you now, where I get my adrenaline's kind of going because
Yeah,
I'm like, I want to achieve, I want to accomplish something today,
yeah,
right? And when you do it, it feels amazing. And so that's what gets me up every day. That gives me excitement, whether it's connecting with people and helping them somehow improve their life, even if it's just saying something to them or telling my daughters, like, hey, control your mind, like the
yeah.
things that I didn't get told. But those things excite me just to see progress. I think that's how I ended up in this entire field and stayed here is because it's just seeing growth is exciting
Yeah.
to me.
I, and I think everybody agrees that it's 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 growth what really makes people happy. Like
Absolutely.
whenever I feel like I'm growing, I'm just so happy. Like when I'm challenging myself, obviously not to the degree where I just like completely fail every single time, but failure is part of that journey. Like first 100 times, yeah,
Oh
we might
yeah,
suck at something, but then
that's the
eventually,
hard one though.
we harness the craft. Like, but that's just how it is, right? I mean, the first
It
time
is.
I tried to write a word, it didn't just came out, right?
Oh
So
my gosh, I have to tell you that that's probably been my biggest struggle is accepting that failure is okay
it's
because I
actually,
was not okay with that for a
yeah,
long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you accept that, or is that an ongoing process for you?
It's definitely an ongoing process
Yeah.
because I think we want to be perfect, right? We at least my mindset used to be that I don't want to fail. I want to figure out how to be really good at this and not have to fail. Why do I want to fail? But you become wiser and you realize, like, oh my gosh, I actually failed a lot to learn this, right? So it almost comes with a package.
Yeah.
If you try to take shortcuts, somehow life throws you right back to learning. And so you have to accept it. And don't get me wrong, I'm still having a hard time with that. But I think that that's also what helps you prepare. Is sometimes you have to not completely be okay with failing. You have to accept that you're going to make mistakes. I
Yeah.
think mistakes are a lot better than failing. I don't like using the word failing because it's accepting to just completely let it go. I don't like letting things go.
Yeah.
I do have this part of me that gets really OCD about, like, I see something, I need to figure out how that's going to work, and figure out plan A, B, and C in case one of them doesn't work. But I'm going to make mistakes, and I have made mistakes, but you adjust. And
Yeah.
then somehow it works out at the end.
And I feel like sometimes in those smaller mistakes or failures, and I actually think the only real failure is if we don't get up again, or if we don't
Yes,
try again, or if we don't readjust. Like if we just simply give up, I think that's the only failure. But
absolutely.
I think then there are some big hits that when we take them, they discourage us for a long time. So how do you handle setbacks usually? Like we all experience setbacks. How do you overcome those? Because you also still you have the family and you're responsible to the investors and the tenants and everybody. So how do you deal with setbacks so it doesn't impact everybody else around you?
I think for a long time, it holds you back sometimes, right? Especially when you get older, you start realizing you're less risk adverse, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to take as many chances because you have a family to feed, you have to think about how your decisions are going to impact, your family life. So sometimes that holds you back, at least for women. I know that that's a big thing that we always, keeps us from jumping sometimes and just making those big decisions.
Yeah.
But also, sometimes you just have to talk to yourself. And like for me, it was super important that my daughters, like, I try to put myself in their shoes, right? Because I think sometimes you can't see it for yourself, but you can clearly see it for other people. You can see when they're making mistakes, you're like, well, I would not really do that if I were you, but you can't see it when it comes to you. So sometimes what I would do is I would look at my daughters and I would say, what would I advise my daughter
Yeah.
to do if she was in this situation, right? Because now I'm a caring mom who truly wants what's best for them.
Yeah.
And I would see them and I would say, you know what? I would tell her, go for it. Go for it, because if you don't, you're going to regret it. And when it came to that point, I was like, you know what? I guarantee you they would tell me the same thing.
Yeah.
They would say, Mom, don't worry about us. Go for it. We're here for you. And that just changes your perspective, because then you're like, okay, now I'm not being that example for them. I can't eventually give them that advice if I'm not willing to take it myself. Then it changes your perspective about it. It
Yeah.
makes you a little more excited to do it, I think.
I mean, you got to define the role model. So
Yeah,
if you don't live it, they're not gonna listen to what you're saying.
absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely.
what is the saying? Kids don't do as you say; they do as you do. Or
Yeah,
yeah. So
exactly.
how did the journey go from that little girl that was sitting out there, nowhere to go, to being involved in real estate, in like building 5,000 multifamily units, and now being a professional syndicator for large scale multifamily projects?
Oh my goodness. Honestly, I wouldn't say luck, but it kind of was. I went to school, I did well in school, but when I went to college, it was completely eye opening for me. I was now around other people that were affluent, some were middle class. I didn't realize I was completely low class when I went there. I
Yeah.
was on complete like grants and the whole thing. And my mom had bought me a car that would allow me to drive the mileage I needed to drive to get into this one school I got into, which was still local, but
Yeah.
it's quite a drive in LA. And when I got there, I was not prepared. I was not prepared at all. Everybody had good study skills. I had none because I
Yeah.
realized I was smart in school, but I was not prepared for college. They really just, not, I don't want to say anything bad about the education system and the public school system, but I was able to
You
be
can if
smart
you want
enough.
to. Feel free.
I mean, I passed all my classes with A's and B's. I
Yeah.
was top 10% of the school, but or my graduating class, but at the same time, I had no study skills, which
Yeah.
really is such a bad thing when you go to college because now you have to study, you have to take notes. I didn't know about taking notes. I would used to just do my homework, turn it in during class, or
Yeah.
go home and just do it and turn it in. So I was not prepared, completely not prepared. I had freedom now, but at the same time, I didn't have money. So it was just like a situation that was, interesting. So one day, I'm doing bad in school at this point because I felt I didn't fit in. I felt
Yeah.
like I didn't have the same mindset as these people. They seemed really relaxed going to school. They all socialize. I was like, can't make any friends here. Like, I don't think like they do. I don't dress like they do. So I started doing really bad in school. I was failing. And at that point, one day I remember just going to the gas station and putting gas in my car and thinking like, oh God, how am I going to do this getting here tomorrow? And, how am I going to tell my mom that this is not going well? I'm putting gas in my car and this guy comes up to me, some random man, and he's like, hey, do you want a job?
What?
And I thought it was so awkward. I would never talk to strangers because,
Yeah.
I was taught not to. But I was like, okay, I'll take his information. It's not going to hurt to
Did
just
Did
take
he
his
say what the
information.
nature of the job was at least? Or
No, but you know what? Even if he did, I wouldn't have understood.
yeah. Okay.
Because that's how unaware and naive I was about just business in general.
Yeah.
And so he offered me this job. He's like, I'm opening a company. I really need people to work. I was like, okay, I'll take his information. I don't know what it was that made me call him. Maybe it was like not having money or realizing I didn't want to, continue to be in this situation. And, my mom, obviously I was already 18. I'm not going to be a burden on her
Yeah.
with my other three sisters. So I called him like, let's see, there's nothing to lose. And he was creating, it was a startup. They were building a company that they had day traders who taught people how to trade commodities and stocks over
Oh,
the phone.
okay.
And they had a group of people, and I was the first employee they had. So my job was to establish the company, create the systems, set up the computers, and open accounts. I had never done any of this, and I don't know how I did it.
Okay.
I guess
Okay.
it was
How
crazy, but I
how did
did.
that happen? Did you ever ask him what he was thinking when he walked up to you at a gas station to then hire you to put his company together?
The funny thing is I didn't, but getting to know him over time, I
Yeah.
realized that's his personality. Like he just goes up to people that he feels are friendly and he would just start conversations with random people. And I guess I looked approachable that day and they needed somebody to start quick.
Yeah.
And that was my first venture into business was working in this company, helping build it. And I mean, it was a massive success.
Yeah.
So I helped build it from ground up and I learned so much. And it was great because they gave me full authority and control to help build this company. And I honestly didn't know what I was doing, but I figured it out. And
So I want to dissect this a little bit.
yeah,
First,
yeah, yeah.
so what did it take in yourself? Like, where did you find in that challenge, where did you find the character to go in and figure it out?
I think it's being in that situation where you're just like, I've got nothing to lose. And something was good about it for me where as I was doing it, it just excited me like, oh, I can figure this out. I can put this, I can call and open these accounts. Oh, I can set everybody up. And then I became the office manager and running the whole thing. And it was so fun to me because I'm sure I made a lot of mistakes along the way,
Yeah.
but I was the one that they relied on to hold it together. So I didn't know what I was doing. And I think when you're young, you're kind of fearless, right?
I
And
agree.
that's
Yeah.
what's great about it. So it was fun. It was fun. It was hard work, but that was the first time I started earning my own money.
Yeah.
So that's also was a driving factor. I was earning my own money. I was able to help my mom out. And then what was great about it is now I can take out my sisters to eat.
Yeah.
Like things we never did. We never had meals outside in restaurants. So now it was my turn to be able to expand my sisters, to expose them to things I had not been exposed to. And that was
Yeah.
exciting to me. Yeah.
So how did you close the gap between not knowing what to do to making it like a very successful enterprise with him?
I think, I just heard a quote the other day, and it said, the paranoid succeed.
The parent.
And I read that and I thought, that is so me. That is so me. As bad as it may sound, but I get paranoid about letting things slip in
Yeah.
my watch, you know? And so I would work extra hard. Like if there was something that did slip, I would take it hard. I would. I'm
Yeah.
that kind of person who would really hold myself to a high regard where you cannot, like the failure thing. You cannot make a mistake. But the thing is that it didn't hold me back from not doing it, right? Because I think that's where people get stuck. It's like you make a mistake or you feel like you failed at something, you don't try it again. For me, it was like, I'm going to do it better next time.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen again. So you do kind of become paranoid, in a good sense
Yeah.
that you're like, I'm not going to fail. I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah.
And that to me was like exciting every day. Like, I'm going to perfect this system, whether it's the computer system, the database. Oh, it has a gap here. I'm going to figure this out. It needs to be flawless. And that's just exciting to me.
So, and then how did you move on from that enterprise into real estate?
So after that, it's really crazy story. Another gentleman.
Crazier than the gas station story?
I'll let you judge. So it was funny. Another gentleman was opening the same kind of company. And he said, come with me. I have a huge investor. And he has a lot of money. He's from oil and gas in Texas, and he wants to do the same thing. So I jumped ship. I'm like, sure, why not? They were offering me an insane amount of money. I think it was like, I don't know, 10,000 a month. I mean, that was unheard of to me, unheard of. And so I was like, why not? Let's
Yeah.
do it. I cannot pass this up. Even if I only get 1 month's pay, I'm set, right? So I've got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
So I took that leap and they established this company, but something was off. It just seemed off. And at some point, everybody else but me was not getting paid. I guess he really liked me or he saw how hard I worked and
So
he
he
must
at
have
least
felt
paid
guilty.
you instead of
Yeah,
everybody
he at
else.
least paid me. So it turns out he was actually wanted by the FBI for he had the feds were after him for taking people's money. He was laundering money. He was taking people for their life savings. A
So
lot of
he,
elderly people.
okay.
Yep. And living this lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yep. Taking from Mo, feeding Jack, the whole thing. It was really a bad situation.
So he didn't really have a fortune from oil and gas.
No, no.
Okay.
So that was like a 2 month stint. And after I was done with that and the feds caught him, that's how we all found out what was happening. One day they just raided the office. I was like, what's going on? So they caught him. He went to federal prison. And I just decided I'm going to work. I have to find another job. I applied for this company that I stayed at 17 years after that. And it was a real estate company. I went in as a office manager. And I just grew from there. They saw my potential really early. They started giving me more. I would take any work, and I just grew in within that company. And it was the best experience for me because I got to learn real estate from an operator owner's perspective,
Yeah.
developer, builder, the whole thing. I got to wear many hats, and it was the best experience for me to transition eventually to be where I am today.
So this particular part of the story is a rather male dominated space.
Yes.
So how did you manage as a young woman to kind of stand your ground and like thrive in that environment? Like what did it take in terms of the mindset and the work ethic that you had to put up to, you know, move on in there?
I don't think I really thought about it at the time. It was definitely a hard thing. I'll be very honest with you. Even going to networking events and you're one of the only females in a room, you do experience where you're shut down constantly.
Yeah.
But I couldn't decipher sometimes whether it was because I was a female or because I was young. And I think there's, both of those things come into play when you are in any industry. Age is definitely something that you also experience ageism. So I couldn't really understand, is it because I'm a woman or is it because I'm young? And there were definitely times that I was talked over, like maybe I didn't understand a situation. But again, it just gave me, excuse me, a desire to figure out, how am I going to do this better? And I think the key in life, honestly, to build any credibility or to build confidence is information. I've learned that's the key. Information is always going to get you further ahead in life. So I really try to learn
Yeah.
and feed myself with information, right? So in the industry we were in, I needed to know what is going on in the neighborhood, for example, that we were developing in.
Yeah.
How's the neighborhood? What's the demographics? What happens in that neighborhood? What it gets approved? Who are the naysayers? What is the process? How do things work? So just feeding yourself with that information, next time you go to the meeting and you have a question, it's going to be a little more educational or more, expert wise. And you're able to be heard where people start to pay attention and to listen.
Yeah.
So when you're young, sometimes you don't realize people tell you experience matters. But I would say it's really the information that you try to gain. Some is through experience, but some is really just educating yourself.
Yeah.
And it's a shame when I see people who have the information in the tip of their hands, but they're looking for something else, you
Yeah.
know? And that's really, information is the key. That's what makes you an expert, you know?
So how do you live this for your daughters? Like how do you encourage them to have that mindset? And because I feel like I grew up in a family business, but at the same time I think we had a rather middle class money and growth mindset, you know. There wasn't a lot of encouragement when it came around those things, despite my parents always encouraging me to just do what I wanted to do and go out. But how do you, like, all of the learnings that you have, how do you make sure they don't get lost and you actually can teach them or move them on to your kids?
It's so hard. It's so hard these days. I'm learning that still today. I don't think I have an answer or will have an answer because they are so distracted. They have so many other, outside influences.
Yeah.
But what I've learned is, even tradition, how it used to be passed was, it was kids listening to the elders speak, right? And that's how tradition would get passed.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, now you have the battle with when they're in a device, they're not listening.
Yeah.
So some of those traditions are getting lost. But I try to make time to talk to them constantly and to show them, obviously, through just my actions, but guiding them just via my words, whether it's in the car, no phones are allowed in the car, no phones at dinner time, whatever it may be, so they can just hear. They can
Yeah.
just hear it because kids these days, they are so distracted and they're absorbing so much information. But
I think it's not only the
gosh,
kids.
yeah, us too. I get information overload and I get
Yeah.
drained. But yes,
I
that's how
think
I
we look at
feel.
the kids and we're like, oh, we didn't spend so much time on a smartphone. Yeah, but that's because we didn't have one. It's,
Exactly.
when
Exactly.
I look around anywhere in the city or something, that I think the adults are just as distracted and
I
absorbed in their
know.
devices.
I know. I mean, it's for someone who, like myself, who I like to connect with people, it almost makes me feel awkward if I'm in an elevator and everybody else is on their phone and I'm not. But I understand that that's our culture, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough.
So in that particular company, I know the company is also founded by an immigrant, right? He's from Iran.
Yeah.
And do you think that gave him an edge in building a company in the United States? Because what I see over and over again, and one of the things I've seen in one of the companies we had here in New York, which was like I saw more entitlement in people that grew up second generation immigrants versus first generation immigrants. And I saw even more entitlement with what one would consider maybe Americans. And I think that immigrants, because they've already made the leap of faith of leaving everything behind, they embrace the grind or the hustle a little bit different.
You know, I just think it's individual too, you know, because like for myself, I'm first generation American, but I didn't get exposed to a lot or have many means. So I
Yeah,
truly believe it's the individual's experience sometimes. My former employer, he's just an amazing person. Honestly, he has that grit, that grind, but he also went through hardship
yeah,
and it wasn't handed to him. And I think that that's what really, for me, I admire him so much because he also has that and he taught it to me. I'll be very honest with you. That's where I talk about like getting those people who are almost like father figures that take you under their wing. I worked hand in hand with him. I
yeah,
was his right hand all these years. And when you have somebody who's like the leader of the pack, you get to see not just the stresses that and the burdens that they carry on their shoulders, but then you also see the other side, which is really admirable, which is the grit,
yeah,
the I'm not backing down. When there's a conflict, we're going to face it head on and we're going to figure this out. We're going to get on to the other side. And he taught me that.
yeah,
And so for me, that I can honestly say it's invaluable. Like you can't get that sometimes in a mastermind, right?
yeah,
It's a day in, day out activity of having that mindset of like, we're going to figure this out. And it may be because you'll lose everything, right? When you're dealing with millions of dollars, you know, especially when the economy crashes in like 08, 09 and your construction lender goes under and you're under
yeah.
construction, you're just like, how are we going to get out of this? But if you have somebody who's like, we're going to figure this out, you know, there's a leap of faith, but some confidence embedded in there. That's the best experience you can have. It's that grind of and making it to the other end. You're
Yeah.
like, wow, we just did that.
I mean, and then especially if you actually pull it off, it builds so much resilience muscle. Like if you know you've
Absolutely.
done that, like then what else? Just bring it on, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that was the best thing for me is being around him and that mindset all those years. Honestly, I contribute my success. If I have some, it's on him, you know,
Yeah.
because of that.
I mean,
Yeah.
you obviously have success, I would say, because you're at this point a multifamily syndicator who successfully purchases large properties. Like so, I'd say by many standards in this world, this is successful. Maybe not by your
Thank you.
own, but a successful life is always up to your own definition of success. So
Thank you so much.
yeah, you're welcome. So what was that like to go into your first syndications? Because I mean, we're all in the syndication space here, and like you've already had a lot of experience in real estate, but then going into your own syndications, what did it take you in terms of mindset and character? Were you scared of the scale of those investments?
I think at first you're always scared, right? To take that initiative, you're always going to be scared. But because the great thing was because I have been in real estate and I'm used to the transactions, I'm used to in this entire side of the business, I almost looked at it like I was doing my job again,
Yeah,
right? Like I'm doing this, I'm dealing with the attorneys, I'm dealing with brokers, I'm negotiating, I'm reviewing loan docs. Like that was all stuff I'm used to doing. So I looked at it in that sense. The one part where I really it was new to me was obviously the capital raising.
yeah,
That became new. But what really I think was so important for me to pull out of myself was what is the kind of syndicator I want to be? Like who am I gonna, what is gonna make me good in this space?
yeah,
Because I have to ask myself that. And I think everybody should. You really should, because what brings people to the table to invest in you, and I'm grateful we have a lot of our investors are people that we know for a long time. They have that trust factor with
yeah,
you. And so if you're able to answer yourself, I'm a person of integrity. Those are the things I define for myself. I'm a person of integrity. I'm someone you can reach out to if you
yeah,
have a question at any time. You can email me. If there's something you don't understand, you don't know, contact me. I'm an open book. There's nothing for me to hide.
yeah,
And that's who I chose to be as a syndicator. And so understanding that, it made it a lot easier also for me to move forward in this space because I felt like, now I'm bringing something good that I truly feel I can bring good. I have the knowledge, I have the experience,
yeah,
but I'm also bringing the integrity to this
yeah.
space. And if I can do that, it makes me excited to be in this space. Yeah.
I found that in the multifamily space, there is actually a lot of credible participants. I mean,
Yes.
there's always in every sector there's some rotten apples, but I find there's a lot of people that are genuine and have integrity in our space. And what did attract you to the space, despite already being like knowledgeable because you worked in that company prior? Like, what made you want to be a syndicator, or what made you want to invest in multifamily syndications?
It was really just I had not been like aware of syndications. To be honest with you, I had been in the space for such a long time and I had never heard of syndications.
Yeah,
And so when I became aware of it and I started seeing, wow, normal people are doing this. What am I waiting for? Like, I obviously have been in this space. It's not something that I would have, there's no learning curve, right? Why not do this? Like, it made complete sense for me
yeah. And you're
that I
probably
could
more
use it.
knowledgeable than many of the other participants in the syndication space, given your 17-year career in the space.
Well, obviously that truly does help, and there's so much I'm learning every day. I truly feel you can never feel like you've learned everything. You have to have a curious mind.
Yeah,
And that's why it became something that now it was like the new carrot, right? Like now I had to learn this space and I was so
yeah,
excited about it. Like, oh, what it makes this work. And that's what excited me and brought me to this space is wow, I didn't know about this side of multifamily. I need to jump into that now. I need to
yeah.
figure that side out.
So
So it's
what
something.
was the most exciting part, or maybe scary part, depending on how you judge it in that moment? Because the body sensations are more or less the same for excitement. And in your first syndication, like what was the challenge? I remember we also spoke back then, and you were just like grinding it out day and night to make sure
Yeah.
everything is in check.
Yeah. I mean, so when we first transitioned over, like, you just try to work through and understand how the space works. Our first deal was a portfolio deal of two properties. So what was great about it is, you put in the effort, you're closing two properties at the same time.
Yeah,
But there's also the negative side of closing two properties at the same time. And I think coming from the development space where every day is a new issue, you're troubleshooting issues every day. You have a lot of people to manage, a lot of people to, you know, that have to answer to you because you're following up with everyone. I kind of applied that mindset here. And because we encountered issues too, I think that sometimes that's not spoken about enough is like you're going to come across deals that they're not as clean as you think,
Yeah.
they have their little hairs like they say. And so we encountered some of those, and I just went right back into that grinding grit mode, and working through it and making sure I got through it because I was not going to lose my investors. I was not going to let them down,
Yeah.
and making sure I crossed every T and dotted every I. Like that was so important to me. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it was that whole mindset of we're going to get through this.
Yeah.
There's issues that come up, especially when you're coming up year end and you're realizing, wow, if we don't resolve this, it's going to go into the new year. My
Yeah.
investors are going to be disappointed because they want that depreciation.
Right. And that's a
So
very thin line at the end of the year.
very thin line.
Yeah.
And as a person of responsibility and ethics, I felt if we were even going to get close to that, I was going to have to go back and tell my investors, I'm sorry guys, it looks like it's going to push the new year. So if you need to go find another investment,
Yeah.
unfortunately, I have to
And I mean, at
let
the
you
end of the
go.
year, there are not that many transactions left that they could invest, and then they need to vet the new possibilities. It's a
It's hard.
bit tricky, yeah.
It was,
So there's a lot of
yeah,
pressure.
a lot of pressure, a lot of sleepless nights, when you have the added element of having investors, you make sure you do it and you do it well.
But I guess also at the same time, this is why people are fortunate from what I hear to invest with you, because you have that kind of attitude. I mean, if I'm investing with somebody, I would like to invest with somebody who has that diligence like you have, who has that like no matter what, I will find a solution mindset, because ultimately many of our investors, they give us their life savings or a chunk of it, and it's like hard earned money, and
It
I think
is.
they should only put it down with people that have that level of integrity like you, and don't mind to stay up until whatever it takes, 2 a.m. if that's what it takes to get it done before the end of the year. You do it for the investors.
Absolutely, because like you said, to me, I don't take it lightly when someone gives me their life savings. To me, it really
Yeah.
means a lot because I know what it is to work hard for that money. And I know that there's a lot of individuals who would never be in a position to be able to invest money like that, or maybe they grew into being able to save that money and it took them years.
That you're impacting your family, your community, and I know some of your friends and family have invested alongside you, so you're really impacting your entire circle. Did that
Aw.
Would you have ever seen that coming to fruition like this?
Never. I'll be honest with you. I think when I was in high school, I used to think, and that's, just going back to that mindset of your environment. I thought if I could get a job at Kmart making $15 an hour, I was going to be set, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
And now to be dealing with, multi-million dollar transactions, it's beyond me. I'm just so grateful, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. Yeah. I really am. God has blessed me, whether you believe in it or not. I'm just so blessed to have the family I have, the people I have around me, the opportunities. I'm beyond me, and I think, that's why I want to give back or help other people be able to go to their, whatever it may be that they're seeking, and try to help them get there too.
I feel like once we have that true sense of being set, or like understanding the mechanics of what's going on, the only real thing left to do is giving back, because there's no sense of purpose in hoarding anything for oneself, even if it's just for the immediate family. I think the only way is sharing, because that's where it all comes full circle.
Absolutely. I don't think I would feel fulfilled if I only had one or the other.
Yeah.
you know I really truly feel like I need to I work so hard to build my brain, I guess you can say. Why not share
Yeah.
what I can? It's gonna go with me 6 feet under someday, so why not share what I can
Yeah,
now?
it's just going to become topsoil again. So now you're still like just in the first third of your life. So you still have two-thirds left or more, given that
Oh,
we
gee.
get older and older and you've already accomplished so much. Where do you see yourself in 10, 20, and 30 years? Like, because you've already kind of built the muscle, you got the mindset, and where do you see yourself in the future? Where do you think you can take this? Because based on your growth mindset, you know that there's a lot more installed here. Like,
Yeah. I mean, part of me really just I see my daughters obviously leaving home and that makes me a little sad. But then it makes me realize, what are you planning to do when they are gone from the house? And I think about building a company where my daughters can come and work, and we can build a family business together. I think about that. Um, but of course, they'll have to want to be willing participants, right?
yeah, that's a very, very crucial part of the equation.
Yes, that. But if not, I want to have steady income, make money while I sleep, travel, and just help people get there too, because it took a whole evolution, I think, to get to this place in my life, and
Yeah.
I want that for others. I want them to enjoy and be worry free and have time.
Yeah.
you know yeah.
So, which place would you like to travel to a lot? What's one of your most favorite places in the world?
I love going to Italy. I
Italy?
love Italy.
Yeah.
Yes. I eventually went back to school and I got my degree in business and English, and I was going for my master's in humanities because of all the history behind it. Long story short, I didn't finish that. I actually ended up going to get my master's in in business analytics, which is that information stuff again,
Yeah.
right? But I traveled to Italy several times and I could just my what brings me joy is like the culture, the food, but really the history to see what people, have
It's so
accomplished.
rich, right?
It's so rich. And they
Yeah.
used to do it with their bare hands and the kind of architecture, the art that took them maybe a lifetime, one lifetime to build this grandiose, piece of art that's still standing today. Like to me, that's inspiring. I love that. I could visit
Yeah.
every basilica every day.
I think it also really puts things in perspective. Today, everybody thinks everything needs to happen overnight because the headlines are filled with, okay, like Sam Bankman-Friedman is like a
Yeah.
crypto billionaire, 29, amassed a fortune. The company is just 3 years old. So we have all those headlines. But if we look back at the history of mankind, we see that some people dedicated their entire life to something that wasn't even finished within their lifetime.
And sometimes it wasn't
Yeah,
even recognized,
yeah,
during their lifetime at all. They were never recognized for their wonderful talents. And it's just inspiring to me
yeah.
to see that someone had that kind of mindset or grill to sit there and chip away at a piece of rock that would eventually become a piece of art in 30 years or something.
Yeah.
That to me is incredible. They were determined,
A lot of dedication there.
a lot of dedication,
I think it
determination.
puts a lot of things in perspective, visiting more ancient places. I think there's something very exciting about living in the United States. There's this young spirit. It's always headed west, it's always
Yeah.
new frontiers, but at the same time connecting with like this ancient part of our human history which really puts overall life in perspective of what it used to be and how blessed we
Yeah,
are. Again, like today we have an amazing lifestyle compared to what just was 50 years ago.
absolutely. I really just and I don't know, I gravitate towards thinking that there were people back in the day that just really they fought for what they had, and they faced so much adversity,
Yeah,
and they figured out how to get through it. And now our culture, I mean, bless them for getting us through some of the things they did, right? Because now we live a very comfortable life, but some of us, at least I like to appreciate what humanity was able to do before my time. And I
I,
get
I
inspired.
do too. And I think it's very important to acknowledge that because everything is just getting the new normal immediately. And
Yes.
then it's just, if there's no sense of appreciation for anything, we will always live unfulfilled and unjoyful because we're always looking for the next upgrade, no matter what.
Yeah.
While we've, as a species, we've come quite far already, and the future is exciting. Like, I'm excited for the future. I'm excited for what's come. I want to grow. You want to learn. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I think moving there from a state of gratitude and appreciation is like a most fundamental piece to living a great life experience.
I think my happiest moments are when I'm just in the moment, you know?
Yeah.
And sometimes I forget that. But my happiest moments have always been when I look back. It's when I'm really just in the moment, in a zone, on doing something, and I'm just fully, present. And I want to have more moments like that in my future. That's what I look forward to.
Yeah. More presence time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you, Brenda. This was an amazing hour spending with you. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And thank you so much for joining us. And awesome. Thank you. Thank you for joining us at The Path to Wealth. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Check out our upcoming guests and be sure to share it with all your friends and family that want to take their life to the next level of wealth.